Conan the Barbarian, created by Robert E. Howard and published in Lancer Paperbacks. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and what we're going to look at now are the original Lancer paperbacks that were published in the late 60s, early 70s, featuring Robert E. Howard's sword and sorcery, heroic fantasy, hero, pirate, buccaneer, conqueror, wizard fighter, Conan of Samaria, Conan the Barbarian. And Conan got his start in Weird Tales magazine in the 1930s. It was a pulp magazine of horror fiction, and in Weird Tales he fought wizards and all kinds of creatures from the mythical Hyborian age of thousands of years before, prehistory. And the thing with Weird Tales was that they had Margaret Brundage was the illustrator for the covers for Weird Tales for the Conan stories, among others. And she was just did stupendous cover art for the those Weird Tales pulp magazines. And then for a while, Conan kind of labored in a little bit of obscurity. There were the Gnome Press hardcover books that were published in the 50s, but they were kind of expensive for most people to get, and they were Gnome Press was a small publisher. The books weren't distributed all that well. You had to kind of really look for them, and so there wasn't any Conan available to the mass reading public. Ace Books did come out with one Conan book in the 50s, and for some reason that didn't continue them. And then in the late 60s, around 67, 68 to the early 70s, Lancer Books began a publishing phenomenon by publishing all of the Conan stories in book form. And they published them in different order, actually. The books, you have to go through these and I'm going to explain, because the books are numbered differently at different times. But the one thing that was great was you had the best hard-boiled, hard-fighting sword and sorcery, heroic fantasy, amazing hero in Conan the Sumerian, Conan the Barbarian, created by Robert E. Howard, combined with the great, fantastic artwork of a guy named Frank Frazetta. Frank Frazetta did most of the covers on the Conan paperbacks for Lancer Books, and they are just magnificent works of art. They capture the character and the mood and the feeling of the stories, the horror, the terror of the wizards that Conan fights, and the battles and everything. Here's most of the books. They're in chronological order, and that's the way I'm going to present them, because when Lancer published these, they published various titles at different times. So, for instance, book number 5, while it says book number 5 on it, is actually it says book number 1 in an earlier edition, and I'll go through that and explain that to you. So here's the spines. Nice set of Conan, the original Ace, and then from 1 to 12 in order, chronological order. So we're going to go in chronological order now, looking at these books. Let me just put my glasses on. The first Conan paperback was Conan the Conqueror, and that was Ace number D36. That was an Ace double book, and it's from 1953, I believe. And on the other side was The Sword of Rhiannon by Lee Brackett. But this is the key book, Conan the Conqueror, the first ever Conan paperback. Then, in chronological order, we're going to look at some of the Lancer books. Now, chronologically, Conan is the first book in the series, but the book says volume 5 of the complete Conan, because what happened was Lancer published 6 or 7 or 8 of the books, and then they had spaces where their other books were going to be published, so they kind of had it all kind of mishmashed. But you'll notice the one thing is like the cover art, and this is like great. First Frazetta cover art, and here he's fighting Thak, the gigantic ape creature that's in the wizard's tower, and some of the other stories in here. There's 7 stories in this book, and they're just terrific, unbelievable stories. The next one is Conan of Samaria, second book in the series. Again, Frazetta cover. This depicts the Frost Giant's daughter, where Conan has to fight the 2 Frost Giants, huge barbarian semi-gods that he's fighting, and he has to defeat them. This is an amazing book. This also has Queen of the Black Coast, which is Howard's story of piracy. Conan is a pirate, and he's with the queen of pirates called Belette, and it's an amazing story. All of these stories bring back like great memories, and the artwork is just so terrific. They couldn't get Frazetta to do the covers on all of the books, so they got veteran science fiction illustrator John DeWillow to do the covers for a couple of the books in the series, the 3 of them. Conan the Freebooter is the 3rd book. John DeWillow did the cover art. It's cutting off the arm of the great ape. And this had Hawks over Shem, Black Colossus, Shadows in the Moonlight, The Road of Eagles, and A Witch Shall Be Born. All really good Conan stories. Really great heroic fantasy.
For people who don't know, John DeWillow was married to...
John DeWillow, yes. He was a science fiction illustrator, and he was married to Elaine DeWillow, the better known as just Elaine, who did a lot of romance covers and actually brought Fabio into prominence. The 4th book in the series, Conan the Wanderer, another John DeWillow cover. I like the John DeWillow covers. I like John DeWillow's artwork. His work, I think, is better in science fiction than it is on these Conan books. It's hard to put his work up against, Frank Frazetta. You can see here. Now, what happened is interesting. What I said before is, so Lancer, you had different. This doesn't say what number it is in the series, but then when they did a reprint in the 70s, they used the same artwork, but now it says number 4. So they had different prices. This is 95 cents. This is the 60s printing, first printing of this Lancer paperback, and then this is a reprint when they put it in the Lancer series. But interestingly enough, this is book number 4, so they actually got it right. On the next book, they kind of didn't. The next one is Conan the Adventurer, and in that is People of the Black Circle, The Slithering Shadow, The Pool of the Black One, and Drums of Tumbalku. Unbelievably great stories. The original Lancer edition, Frank Frazetta again, and this is a reprint. And so you'll see over here it says Volume 1 of the Complete Conan Saga, which this was Volume 1 when Lancer started publishing the Conan books. But then once they kept publishing different books in the series and they added other books, this ended up becoming Volume 5. Now here's Frazetta's cover. They cut a little bit of it off over here, so you can see the most of it here. This is an amazing cover. This shows Conan at his, the mature barbarian who's standing. He's conquered all of his enemies. He's standing with sword on the corpses of all his enemies. All around him are slithering snake-like creatures, skulls, demons, wizards that he's fought. The haunting images that really run through these stories. I mean, Howard was just really amazing at describing the sheer terror and horror that Conan felt going up against the wizards and the demons and the various non-supernatural enemies that he fought. I mean, he was a fighter, and he was just and some of the women that he met along the way too were vicious. It was a vicious world, the Hyborian Age. Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age was one that was fraught with peril, and Conan was thrust in the middle of it, and it was brutal, and it was. But when you're reading it, oh boy, are they just great stories? They are great fun stories, and it's just terrific adventure fiction. Number 6 was Conan the Buccaneer, and this was written by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. There were a couple of other authors who contributed stories to the Conan series, and they are included in the Lancer editions. This was a novel that they wrote together, based on Howard's creation, and the book is pretty good. Conan's a pirate, buccaneer, of course, and he always was. There were other stories that Howard wrote where he was a pirate, but probably the best thing about this book is the unbelievable Frazetta cover here of him just battling a brutal battle, like amazing, and the covers just get better and better on. Number 7 is Conan the Warrior, which has Red Nails, Jewels of Gwalar, and Beyond the Black River. And this is Conan the Wanderer. Again, an amazing Frazetta cover. Conan with the axe, bloody axe, fighting. He's grabbing an enemy by the throat. This is sheer carnage. And this shows you the effects of battle, hand to hand, sword and axe battle that was in these stories. Frazetta's unbelievable artwork on this book, on this cover. So Robert E. Howard and L. Sprague de Camp also helped with the stories, but there were 2 classic Weird Tales stories in here. Red Nails, which is just an amazing story, and Beyond the Black River, which is kind of Howard's version of Drums Along the Mohawk. What happens is the Black River is the barrier between Aquilonia, a kingdom of light and civilization, and beyond the Black River is the land of the Picts, the Picts, kind of taking. Howard took in a little bit of the British northern barbarians that the Romans fought beyond the wall of Hadrian. Hadrian built a wall across England to keep the northern barbarians out. And in Howard's story, Beyond the Black River, it's similar. So you have the Black River is the barrier that nobody can cross, and then on the other side there are incredible barbarians, and there's all kinds of demons and wizards and witches and things, all kinds of stuff that Conan has to deal with, and he does deal with it, and it's an amazing story. These stories are stories that I read when I was in my teens and 20s, and almost, a few of them are forgetful. Howard wasn't always on his peak, and some of the stories were written by other people that were okay, but the best Howard stories, about half of these in the Conan books, you're not going to forget them. You'll never forget them. They are so good. The next one is Conan the Usurper, which has the Treasure of Trinicos, Phoenix on the Sword, the Scarlet Citadel, and Wolves Beyond the Border. And again, this one says that it's volume 4 of the complete Conan. So at that time it was, but at this time it's not. It's volume 8 actually. And again, you have an amazing Frazetta cover of Conan chained, riding a giant snake, set, come back to life, maybe from the wizard Tathaman, who was an evil wizard and who was able to change himself into Set, a giant snake god. And Conan's fighting. That's the snake god's coming after him. He's tied up, chained up, but he's going to prevail. Unbelievable artwork and unbelievable stories.
How do you feel about the way he was portrayed in the movies? I know with Tarzan, you're not happy with the way he was portrayed in movies, but what about Conan?
Schwarzenegger was very good. He was. I think the thing is, you can't really capture a lot of this in the movies. You can't capture the poetic, lyrical, haunting, terror style that Howard could put into his characters, into his stories. You can't capture that. When you're reading these books alone, stories alone by yourself, you're just like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. When you're watching the movie, it's like, okay, it's a good movie, it's exciting, it's interesting, but it just doesn't capture, as good as Schwarzenegger was, and he was good. John Millis wrote the script for the first Conan movie. He's a great writer, screenwriter, and but it just didn't. It cannot compare. It cannot compare. Don't get me started on Tarzan and Edgar Rice Burroughs, the original Tarzan stories and books compared with the moronic, every moronic movie. That's going to be another video because I got a lot to say about that. Okay, now back to normalcy. So we looked at Conan the Usurper, number 8, and number 9 is Conan the Conqueror, and of course, that's the book here, number 9. The first Conan book was a novel, and this is the first paperback, and then this is in the Conan set. It ends up becoming number 9 in the series. Another great Frazetta cover. This is a reprint because there's a whole series that reprints the Lancer books by Ace Books, and they have a series number 9. They're numbered chronologically. This is number 9, and Sphere Books in the UK brought out the similar series, also numbering the books. This cuts off a little bit of the Frazetta cover art from the original Lancer book, but it gives you the idea. Here he is on a horse, fighting through all kinds of enemies, and Conan is always defiant and ready to fight, and he's got some unbelievable challenges. It's just like, look at these 3 covers. Look at the Frazetta art. It's amazing. Now, the thing is with this art, Frazetta art, in 1977 they opened up the Frank Frazetta Museum in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and I was there with actually C.J. Henderson, a writer friend of mine. He was there, but we didn't know each other at that time. But we were a lot of Frazetta fans and Conan and Robert E. Howard fans went to this opening of the Frazetta Museum, and I saw the actual paintings, all these actual paintings, on display there. They are big, they are huge paintings, and they are unbelievable. When I walked into that museum, the wall display, you see one painting here and one there, and it's just like, it is amazing. It was like, oh my God, because you're looking at a little image. It's maybe 4 inches by 4 inches on the cover of a paperback book, which is, in those days in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have a lot of ways to show and display art, and you couldn't really get to see the original paintings, and there was no eBay or Heritage Auction or any of this kind of stuff. And you wouldn't find this stuff at science fiction conventions generally because it would be already gone. It was already in collections. But the Frazetta Museum had all his paintings, and it was like unbelievable. And not too long ago, we went to the Robert Lesser art display of original art paintings at the Brooklyn Museum. And he had the original paintings, some of the Margaret Brundage Conan paintings from Weird Tales on display. He also had some of the J. Allen St. John Tarzan paintings, and he had some of the Frazetta original paintings from the Lancer books. So that was, I believe, in the 90s. And that was, it's just amazing to see these original paintings, and that, thank God they're still around, they're still with us, because they're magnificent. And Frazetta was just like, he hit his stride with all of these. The next one is number 10, Conan the Avenger. Again, here he is fighting. A wizard is sacrificing a helpless female captive, and Conan is flying through the air to stop the wizard's knife from killing her. Great stories in there. The next one is Conan of Aquilonia. This was a book that came out in 1977, and the first printing was Ace Printing. It's number 11 in the series. This one has Boris Vallejo cover art, and it's actually Conan older with his son, Khan. And this stories were written by Elsbeth de Camp and Lynn Carter. And the last one, number 12, is Conan of the Isles by Lynn Carter and Elsbeth de Camp. And it's also a John DeWillow cover. The other thing is there was a I'm not sure which one. Just want to mention this about Bjorn Nyberg. One of the Conan books was actually written by Bjorn Nyberg, I believe Swedish author who was a big fan of Robert E. Howard and the Conan series. And it does say on them, I just want to note that. Can't find it, but he did write one of the books. So there you have a look at pretty much the original set in chronological order of the 12 Conan the Barbarian vintage paperbacks from Lancer Books, and they're great reads. They're fantastic, utterly fantastic. Heroic fantasy, sword and sorcery. These are the books that made the sword and sorcery genre so popular. These are the books that came out in the late 60s and early 70s and sold like crazy. They were reprinted like crazy. And then other authors, Elsbeth de Camp and Lynn Carter, but also John Jakes. So many other fantasy and science fiction authors began various versions of their barbarian heroes. This is where the whole barbarian hero genre came from. So if you enjoyed this look at Conan, trip down memory lane, hope you give us a thumbs up and a like, and thanks. See you next time.